It's up, and if you wish us to ask you some questions, just before we start, I've had a request from a councillor that one question each until others have had a go, and then we can come back for more questions. So, Councillor Barker, just so you're aware, one question each, so others can have a go, and then we can come back if we have time for subsequent. So pick your favourite is my suggestion.
Well, alternatively, could I suggest that we try and have more time for questions? I think 10 minutes is short for submissions. I think having 2 minutes for questions is also really short.
Well, someone's asking a question there right now.
Sorry, I have a...
10 minutes is it, and it's up to the submitter. Some submitters don't wish us to ask them questions and they make the full use of their time. It's up to them. Okay, Mr. Sutton, good morning.
Can people hear me?
Loud and clear.
With the microphone on.
Is the microphone on?
The red button will glow.
Can you hear me better now? Yes. Can I first thank councillors and others for giving me the chance to appear and state some views on this proposal. It wouldn't be possible in most parts of the world, and I hope everybody fully appreciates the value of living in New Zealand in this kind of society. The proposed Ruataniwha water storage scheme is a complex project with multiple objectives, a lot of moving parts, and a projected lifetime of more than 75 years. This makes it difficult to compare the RWSS with alternative investments on a cost-benefit basis. I'd like to acknowledge the large amount of expert work from councillors, staff and consultants that have gone into developing the RWSS to its current form. The fact that I don't support it is not intended as a reflection on any of those who have contributed to it. I support storing some of the seasonal water surpluses from Hawke's Bay water bodies for use by local communities at times of water shortage. I do not support the RWSS as currently proposed. However, I don't wish to see the time and money already committed to developing this proposal wasted. Instead, I would like to see the current proposal improved to make it more broadly acceptable. In my opinion, improvements and alternatives are possible and ought to be further considered by Council before any investment goes ahead. This would require a delay in the proposed investment timeline. However, the Board of Inquiry report has already ensured a delay by setting environmental conditions that the RWSS proposal cannot easily meet. And I think that was obvious from the evidence of some of the previous submitters. The focus of my submission is not on those environmental, social and broader economic projected outcomes which are so hard to measure, let alone predict. Instead, I'm focusing on the projected financial returns to ratepayers from the council through HBRC investing in this scheme, and whether those returns are sufficient to justify spending $90 to $100 million of ratepayers' money. The advantage of taking a financial focus is it sets aside those broader impacts which I listed. The financial costs and benefits of an investment are fungible. That means they can be fairly readily compared with alternatives, quantitatively. Now I'm going to cut out a number of paragraphs in my submission, and for those councillors who haven't already received a copy of it, this is the revised submission which I only completed this morning. I have issued copies to some councillors. If any other councillor hasn't got a copy, here are some copies. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, which is 4 pages. I'm going to focus on some key points. based on my experience as an investor, I consider that the private investors in the RWSS as proposed are likely to receive financial returns of 5 to 10% per annum during the first 10 years of the scheme. But the council, through HBRC, is likely to receive minimal financial returns during that period and could in fact sustain financial losses. That is why I said publicly a month or so ago that as an individual I wouldn't be investing a single dollar in the scheme. Of course, if I received the guarantees that private investors, large ones, are receiving under the proposal, that would be a different story. I further consider the possible longer-term financial returns to council from investing in the RWSS as proposed will not sufficiently compensate current ratepayers for the upfront costs of this investment and for the loss of potential income from alternative investments. Now I want to briefly introduce the idea of a base model. A major reason for the difficulty in estimating the financial returns from the proposal is that it includes more than 7 special provisions, several of which seem designed to improve the scheme's appeal to other investors at the council's expense. I've listed those 7 items in a footnote on this written submission. A second major reason why the costs and benefits of the proposal are hard to assess is that the business case is presented on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. You either support the proposed investment or you don't support it. I think council ought to be considering it as one of several alternatives, and I've suggested 3 alternative courses or scenarios in this submission, and those would be compared on a similar basis with the current proposal for the RWSS. And I want to finish this by simply presenting the recommendations I'm making to council. I recommend that you note that the likely financial returns to council from investing in the scheme are minimal and could be negative, and will be significantly less than the likely financial returns to lenders and private investors. I want you to note that the business case includes several special provisions likely to benefit lenders and private investors at council's expense. I'd like you to note that the business case has been presented on a take-it-or-leave-it basis rather than as one of several alternative scenarios. I'd like you to agree to prepare a financial model, which I refer to as the base model, for exploring the costs and benefits of the scheme. In the base model, all investors would receive long-term ownership shares in the scheme's assets and similar per-share dividends and voting rights for board members, but no other special rights. That would significantly improve the position of the council through HBRC from what is currently proposed. All water takes from the scheme would be purchased at the same unit price. That would cost the council, instead of being gifted 27% of the water for so-called environmental purposes, you'd have to pay for it.
2 minutes, Mr. Sutton.
Takes required to meet the EPA's environmental conditions would continue to take priority. I'd like you to agree to look at variations to the base model, showing clearly to councillors and others the costs and benefits of each of those special provisions, and that the council then decides, in consultation with HBRC, which ones you want to retain. I want you to agree to prepare financial projections and a summary of the broad benefits, including the impact on rates, for the current proposal as compared with 3 other investment scenarios. And finally, and I suggest this in all humility, I think council should at least consider further exploring ratepayer preferences for these alternative scenarios once they've been analysed, and taking account of those preferences when you make your decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Scott.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Mr. Sutton, Dr. Sutton, for your submission. I'd like to pick up on the first page of your oral submission, and that's on the financial returns. Would you consider that an initial return on investment greater than bank interest would be a reasonable return for the regional investment company at this stage, or for the council to receive on its money through the investment company?
No, I would not consider that to be an acceptable return.
So
let me explain why.
Sorry.
Current bank interest rates are minimal in this country, and the correct concern is not, the correct comparison is not zero, it's the alternative return that could be obtained from other investments, which one of your submitters has said 10 to 12%. I'm more conservative and say 6% tax paid is readily available as a return on that money. So if you're getting zero, you're actually running a deficit of 6%.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. That 10 minutes are up. Thank you, sir. And thank you for a very thoughtful and well presented proposal. Thank you. Or submission, I should say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.